Hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from Free State, Colorado here, and we got a very special live stream this evening. It's going to be a lot of fun, that's for sure. Talking about what's going on in the state legislature this week. So many bills have dropped. It's going to be absolutely infuriating, infuriating. So I hope you're ready for that. Definitely going to be a lot of fun there. Michael, are you here?
I am here, Brandon. I am excited and I'm ready to go. Let me turn my video on for you real quick. There we go.
Right on, right on. And I was gonna I was showing up a little bit different here to turn off the screen sharing so we can introduce ourselves, but I think everybody kind of knows who we are already. But
Absolutely.
Michael, if you want to introduce yourself, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Michael Vance. I'm somebody who's really passionate about what's going on in the state of Colorado, just like Brandon. We're both really excited to help make Colorado a freer state, and we're happy you're joining us.
Awesome, right on. Yeah, we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it's always a blast. We really want to encourage people to get involved with our state government, show up at legislative committee hearings, but most importantly, be informed. Talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your coworkers, but let's talk about what's happening in our state government. So often it's neglected. All these terrible, terrible policies that I hate to say it, but it's all the Democratic majority in our state legislature is responsible for. And I hate being partisan. But that's just the reality of it, folks. That's just the reality of it. There's no getting around that point. Right? What would you say to that, Michael?
No, I completely agree. If you're not getting active, that's exactly what they want. And as long as you're not active, they're going to keep on encroaching on your rights, and they do it one little jab at a time. They nickel and dime all of your rights away, and the next thing you know, it you're without rights and then without the ability to speak out. So speak out now while you can, otherwise you're going to lose that privilege forever.
100%. Yeah, we got some great people in the chat. If you're on YouTube, please share this link, like, comment, share. We had over 500 views on the first week of this legislative session last week, and it was an absolute blast. I see we got Simone Rubino 52 saying Wolverines, right on. Jerry Lewis 8604, good evening. And the Street DJ, welcome, Street. Good to see people. I'm sure we'll see a lot more people trickle in. It is recorded on YouTube, so you can always come back and watch this, but please share it with your friends, share it with people who might be interested, and pay attention to what's going on in our state government. It's so important, and it's really important to have a voice. But you ready to get started, Michael?
Let's go for it.
Right on here. All right. Pull up the screen share again here. Awesome. There we go. So yeah, we got January 18th, 2026 here. We're going to talk about some of the bills that have been introduced. There's been quite a few here this legislative session already. So here's our schedule for tonight, folks. Great to see you on the live stream here. It's a blast. We'll definitely be taking questions from the chat on YouTube and interacting with you there as well. But here we go. We got the legislative schedule. We're going to talk about what's happening this week, some of the big bills that we're probably going to be following on all session long because they're just absolutely crazy. And then this is kind of something a little different, but we want to talk about some of the legislators to watch. So these are some of the most vulnerable Democrats that we need to defeat in 2026 if we want to turn our state around. Like I said at the beginning, folks, it's really the Democratic majority that's causing all this problem. And I think after you see some of the bills that they're sponsoring this year, you're going to want to get involved to get these people out of office. We have to have a change of course for our families, for our communities, for our businesses, for the future of Colorado. So, how does that sound, Michael?
That sounds great. I'm excited to get into it. I think all this is really important stuff. I'm really looking forward to not only talking about some of these bad bills that have finally got been introduced now that legislative session has started, but I'm really excited to see how we can transition the fight from the legislative session to 2026. And I think a key way to do that is that looking at some of these legislators that we're going to look over after we talk about some of these terrible bills.
Definitely. Yeah, really excited to share some of the data. I've been crunching the numbers, seeing who might be relatively easy targets. Don't get me wrong, nothing's easy here, but relatively easy targets for the Liberty community to really focus on targeting in 2026. But let's start off and talk about what's going on this week at the state legislature. So the big thing, folks, you probably have this website bookmarked or saved in your history on your web browser, but it's leg.colorado.gov. This is really your one-stop shop to know what's happening in the General Assembly, as it's called, the 75th General Assembly. And you'll notice this is the second regular session because since the representatives serve 2-year terms, they really say there's a first and regular session for that class of legislators, I guess, is one way to put it there, if that makes sense to people out there. So if you go into the legislative website here, you can scroll down, see a lot of information. They're going to give you this schedule. And then you can actually just click full house schedule or house calendar. We're just going to click one of these, full house schedule, and then you can actually still change it to do both the Senate and the House up here on Origin. But let's look at the schedule for this week. So, as you may know, Monday, January 19th, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. A lot of fireworks over the Martin Luther King Jr. resolution this last week. Pretty wild to see down at the state legislature. We can talk about that later if you'd like. But there's no activity at the state government, so that's a good news. We got a little bit of a reprieve here, only a 4-day work week down there. A bunch of slackers in our state government. But then if you click into the next day, you can see Tuesday through the rest of the week, Friday. But you can see the different committees. So the first committee is going to be Tuesday, and let's see if we can make this a little bit bigger for you there. But the state Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. If you click in there, folks, it really gives you the breakdown of what's happening that day, what they're going to be hearing, and this is where you can actually listen and now view what's happening down there. So listen to the audio, and there is some video. But you can see there's the Military Affairs and Veterans Affairs. So it's the department of that. The executive director is doing a presentation. So as you probably know, these first couple of weeks are really caught up with the SMART hearings. So there's a SMART Act in Colorado that requires all the executive departments of our state government to do these yearly reports to the legislative branch in terms of showing kind of where they're at, showing their legislative agenda for this year's session, kind of budgetary requests, and then, of course, a little bit more in terms of any plans they have to do something better job in their department, really. Ultimately, what it comes down to. And that's really the schedule for the whole week. I'm not necessarily going to click into every day and every committee hearing, but I just wanted to at least give people, make sure you knew where to look for this information about what's happening every week. And then also just to know that these SMART Act hearings are happening. So, folks, if there's something you're really interested in, definitely show up to these SMART Act hearings. You can actually participate and ask questions yourself during these hearings. They're open to the public. You can become a better informed citizen and learn a lot what's happening. And you'll see a lot of these are joint committees between the Senate and the House because the departments are just going to do one presentation for both of them. So, any other thoughts, Michael, on this week's schedule in terms of committee hearings and in terms of the different SMART Act hearings?
I think you bring up a really good point. The Smart Act hearings are something that people not only should be participating in, but they really need to. You can learn a lot of very important information. I don't know if you saw this, Brandon, but Larry Don Sukla, who's quickly become one of my favorite representatives down at the Capitol, he he really laid into somebody on the budget committee because he flat out asked them, "What happens when you don't have when somebody writes a terrible budget and they end up going way over the actual spending caps that they fully intended on implementing on the state's budget?" And they flat out said nothing. There is no consequences for writing a terrible budget. So you can absolutely not adhere to your fiduciary duty as an individual who's responsible for the budget and completely get away with it. There's no discipline, there's no punishment whatsoever for these people. So we need to make sure that we're down there holding these individuals accountable and letting your representatives know this is not okay and they need to do something about this because right now we are looking at another budget crunch. We are currently looking at a $800 million budget crunch, where they need to shrink the budget, and that comes after a $1.2 billion budget gap. And that is currently being used as an excuse to get rid of Tabor by the Democrats. We're going to see this again. We saw it last year. They tried to pass a resolution to sue the state. And we're going to see, and they're going to try to do this again. They've already come out and said it. Sean Camacho, they all hate Tabor. So we're going to keep an eye on that. And as soon as something comes up, we're going to be letting everybody know. But in the meantime, we need to be holding our legislators accountable because at the beginning of Polis's term, as governor, the state budget was 29 billion. It's currently sitting at 44 billion. So in 7 years, it's risen 15 billion dollars. That's absolutely unacceptable, and these people are not being held accountable whatsoever. So make sure that you get down there to these smart hearings. If you can't get down there in person, at least listen. As Brandon showed you, there's a link so that way everybody can pay attention. But it's absolutely critical that we're all following along and what our state government's doing to us.
Yeah, great points, Michael. And it was awesome to see Representative Larry Don Sukla as well as Representative Ken DeGraff. I've seen Representative Scott Bottoms do it before as well, but really challenge these executive departments during these SMART Act hearings. And it was awesome. I mean, definitely make sure you're following a lot of these people on X and Facebook. That's where a lot of them post this information. But that's really what we got going on this week at the state legislature. We're going to keep it moving here because we have so many bad bills to hear about, folks. If you need to take your pressure medication, if you need to pour yourself a stiff drink, I guess don't do both of those things. I don't think you're supposed to combine them. But get ready for your blood to boil because you're going to see some of the bad legislation that these wannabe authoritarian dictators are introducing this year that's going to affect nearly every aspect of our lives. Of course, this is why we do this. This is why we fight. We want to have a voice and we want to push back. So let's go ahead and jump into some of the important bills that have dropped. So just going back to the legislative website here, if you click bills, click search bills, you'll really see everything, right? So right now there are 104 bills, memorials, and resolutions for the 2026 legislative session. Resolutions and memorials are fine, but if you look at just bills, we have 94 bills. So I went through every single one of these 94 bills yesterday and came up with some lists of some of the ones that I really think you should know about. So let's jump in. You ready, Michael?
Let's go for it, Brandon.
All right. We want to start off with some good news. There's some good bills. And folks, if we could change the composition of the legislature to have more pro-liberty Democrats and more Republicans elected that also hopefully believe in liberty, we can get good bills like this passed. Now, there's great news about House Bill 1033. This is Representative Ryan Gonzalez's bill. I know we're going to have him on this program at some point to talk about it, but he's co-sponsoring this bill with Representative Monica Duran, and she is the House Majority Leader. So she is basically the top Democrat besides the Speaker of the House in our state legislature, House of Representatives. So the fact that she's sponsoring this bill is going to pass, and it is great. Let's just take a quick look at it. This is something to be excited about, folks. This is Representative Gonzalez doing his best to really try and get a pro-liberty bill put forward, and he's going to do it this year. If you remember last year, there was a bill that was nearly identical to this that was killed because the county health departments don't like this idea, right? So right now in Colorado, we do have a decent cottage foods industry, but this bill would expand the Colorado Cottage Foods Act. Let's make that bigger for you there. Hopefully you can see that a little bit better now. Okay. By allowing for the sale of homemade foods that require refrigeration and foods that include meat and meat products. A producer of a food that requires time and temperature control must take a food safety course that includes food handling training concerning time and temperature control and acquire and maintain proof of course completion. So this is great in as much as that like right now, so people can sell like, food that does not require refrigeration and doesn't have meat in it. People can sell that as street vendors without really having to jump through a lot of hoops. This will expand that to that Cottage Food Industries Act. So food that requires refrigeration, meat and meat products. So this he's calling this the Tamale Act. And a similar bill did pass in New Mexico a couple years ago. Of course, there's a little bit of some us libertarians don't like, which is the producer of the food being required by our state government to take this food safety course and then have to have some sort of proof of the completion. But, that's the compromise that Representative Gonzalez had to make because the county health departments hate this bill. They don't like it. They don't like these people doing these things outside of their purview, of course. And you really need them on board, unfortunately. The bill authorizes a county, district, or regional health agency that inspects or investigates homemade food products produced pursuant to the Colorado Cottage Food Act to impose a fine for a violation of the requirements of the Cottage Food Act and to recover the cost of the inspection or investigation. Now, this bill also removes the $10,000 cap on net revenues that a producer can earn under the CCFA. Now, that was a huge controversial point of the bill. I heard from Representative Gonzalez because a lot of restaurateurs don't like that, right? They're saying, okay, yeah, you could be a cottage food industry here in Colorado as long as you're not bringing in more than $10,000 on net revenue. Um, but this changes that. It's great. This is actually a good expansion of freedom. Of course, we'd love to see it go further, but it's a step in the right direction that is a great chance of passing. Governor Polis is supposedly behind this bill, supporting it, and so is Representative Monica Duran. So, really good chance. What are your thoughts here, Michael, on the Tamale Act?
I love it. I'm really excited for uh, Rep. Gonzalez's second year in the legislature. He's really tried to push hard. I know last year we worked with him on the cage-free egg bill, where we were trying to repeal the cage-free egg ban, or the non-cage-free egg ban. And I'm really excited for what he's doing here year two. I think if you ever get the opportunity to talk to him, he's a young, very energetic, very enthusiastic individual who really cares about our state. So I'm excited for what Rep. Gonzalez is doing, especially with this bill, because not only did he introduce it, but he was able to get high up leadership within the Democratic Party to make this to get Democrats behind a good bill that's gonna be a good food freedom bill. As you said, it's not perfect. There's stuff that we can always change down the road. Maybe we can, as the Democrats do, introduce another bill down the road to get rid of some of the stuff that we don't like. But overall, I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is an A bill. Even with some of the stuff that we don't like, because of how important this is going, how important this will be for some individuals and how this is going to help the Colorado economy, especially in an economy that's absolutely struggling when we are, I believe, the sixth highest regulated state in the country. That's a real issue. So if we can help expand, if we can kind of give some of these businesses a little bit more freedom, especially with the $10,000 cap, um, that's going to really go a long way for Colorado. One thing I would ask everybody to do is if you scroll up just a little bit, Brandon, you'll see there are two prime sponsors on this bill. That's fantastic that we have it's bipartisan, so that way we can help push this thing through. Now, the one thing that this bill is missing is a prime sponsor in the Senate. If we get a prime sponsor in the Senate, I have no doubt that we can get this into the legislature, and especially if we have support from the governor, I think there's a high chance that we can get this bill to pass, and we can see this bill on Governor Polis's desk.
Yeah, great point. Definitely needs a Senate sponsor. I'm sure there will be somebody there who's willing to jump onto it. But yeah, definitely a good bill. Moves us in the right direction, helps expand the food freedom here in Colorado, which is something actually Jared Polis is pretty good on. So, folks, when you click in here, you'll see bill history. You'll see that this bill was introduced on the 14th, or at least read on the desks. That's first reading into the legislature on the 14th, and then introduced in the House. So it's going to be in the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee. I really encourage people to get involved in the committee process this year. So email committee members if there's a good bill like this coming up. Show up to testify in person if possible. You can do it over Zoom as well. You can even do it over a touch-tone phone, but at least get involved, have a voice, and let's try and get this one. Give some good praise for this one and try and get it across the curb. So. Good stuff there. Happy to see it. But let's move on here. Great bill from Representative Gonzalez. We're going to keep you up to date on this one, folks. And
Oh,
great
Brandon,
comments there in the chat. Yeah, go for it.
one last thing I want you mentioned you reminded me. Email your representation in the Senate and let them know about this bill. Tell them you like this bill and let them know how this is going to help Colorado. Get this in front of their staff, get this in front of your senator, and so that way we can get that sponsorship, get that prime sponsorship from the Senate.
Definitely, definitely know who your state reps are, your state senators, and tell them to sponsor this bill. That's a great idea. But we got another great bill here, folks. This is one to be really excited about. And the best thing is, if we had a free state or a legislature that had a lot of pro-liberty legislators in it, a lot of pro-freedom people, which of course we don't right now. But how wonderful would that be? We could actually see our Second Amendment rights restored here in Colorado. This is the Second Amendment Protection Act. We're definitely going to have some of the sponsors on at a later date to talk about this bill and some of the others. Really want to see people show up to support this one. It's a good one. House Bill 1021, the Second Amendment Protection Act. Now, one of the great things that Representative Brandy Bradley and Representative Max Brooks did on this bill as they drafted it, they basically had the legislative staff come up with a list of all these infringements on our rights. So, all of these things listed here are currently state laws that are related to infringing on our ability to defend ourselves, our God given right to self defense with firearms or other weapons. So this bill, they told the bill drafter, hey, make a list of all these gun laws that have gone after our rights here in recent memory, and we're just going to repeal them all in one bill. I mean, how amazing would that be? Look at this. Look at the gun show regulations, the state permit to deal firearms in Colorado, the possession of certain ammunition magazines, the regulation of ammunition sales, the prohibit carrying a concealed handgun in certain areas. I mean, this is phenomenal. Of course, we know where this is going. Don't get me wrong, folks, but we still need to show up. We still need to have a voice. And you got to think these legislators only have 5 bills every year, and they chose to stand up for our Second Amendment rights with one of their bills. The people in Colorado who believe in liberty and the Second Amendment need to show up and support this bill. It also would repeal the Office of Gun Violence Prevention. It's a Christmas list here, folks, of repealing bad gun laws that infringe on our freedoms and take us away from freedom. So amazing job. Really excited about this bill. It really sets the tone in the narrative. And I say read the bill too if you haven't already, folks. The introduction they have on this bill is awesome. It is awesome. It's basically, I'll just read briefly here. For more than 15 years, the state of Colorado and successive general assemblies have waged an unrelenting and deliberate assault on the constitutional right of the people to keep and bear arms. Under the false pretense of public safety, lawmakers have enacted a steady stream of punitive, ideologically driven gun control measures designed not to stop criminals, but to exhaust, intimidate, and disarm law abiding citizens. That is awesome. This is a great bill. We really, gosh, please, people, I want to see people show up and support this because you got to think these legislators who are sponsoring this bill, who are supporting it, they're putting themselves forward with this. And then if there's nobody shows up in a committee hearing in support of the Second Amendment Protection Act, I can just hear the Democrats' voices saying, oh, you don't have anybody here supports this. Nobody in Colorado supports repealing these gun control laws. Everybody loves them. That's what they're going to say. That's what it's going to be about. And we're just going to discourage our good pro-liberty legislators like the ones here from sponsoring bills like this. They'll say, hey, the public's not showing up. People aren't getting involved. Why even sponsor a bill like that? So we got to show up. We got to get involved. Even though we know the outcome, don't get me wrong, we still have to try, and we have to force these members in this House Judiciary Committee to vote wrong on the Democratic side and then hold them accountable for it. That is also extremely important. What are your thoughts, Michael, on the Second Amendment Protection Act?
I think you bring up a great point. This bill, I think, is something that we need to use. As you said, it's a Christmas list of all the legislation we absolutely loathe in Colorado and we need to get rid of. Um, and we need to use this in 2026 during the general election. Talk with your friends, talk with your family. Everybody that you know in Colorado that doesn't actually vote, that thinks it's a waste of time, tell them as long as we're not voting, this bill does not have a chance to pass. So this is your moment. This is your opportunity to get them engaged and let them see that their voice actually makes a difference. Because remember, Rebecca Kelty, uh, out in House District 16, she won by 3 votes. She initially won by 7 votes. Her election went to a recount, which is a state mandate because it was within 0.5%, and she ended up winning by 3 votes in the second election count. So your voice matters, and if we don't show up, we're not going to win. But if we show up, we at least have a chance. So as long as we have a chance, we have life. And we all need to remind our friends and family, because I've got friends and family that can see voting as a waste because they see how messed up everything is inside Colorado, particularly within the Secretary of State. So remind them that they have, as long as we have an opportunity, we have a chance. And as long as we don't vote, as long as we don't get active, as long as we're not getting down to the Capitol or at least joining remotely via Zoom to testify, we have a shot. So you never know what you're going to say. And if you're getting out and you're getting your voice out in testimony as well as during the election, we've got an opportunity. So just I want to remind everybody to remember this bill come November.
Definitely. It's great. And we're getting this on the record. We're getting these people on the record there and holding them accountable and putting this out there for people. We have to have good legislation and support. So please, folks, 1021, the Second Amendment Protection Act, just shared the link in the YouTube chat there. But yes, this is a great one. Really excited to see it. We're going to keep you up to date, folks. Right now, all these bills are introduced. We're talking about today, but they have not been assigned a committee hearing yet. And by that, I mean they're not assigned a date yet. Now, this is a very interesting one. Representative DeGraff talked about this one on a recent video I did with him. Encourage people to check this out. House Bill 1037, ban government purchase of personal data from third party. So I think this is a good thing. And actually, he's got Democrats who are sponsoring this bill. This one actually might make it, folks. We're going to see some fighting, and it's going to be interesting. We're going to see some of the law and order Republicans, I'm sure, come out against this bill. We're going to see some of the law and order Democrats come out against this bill as well. Believe me, there are a couple of them. But this prohibits a government entity from obtaining certain personal data from a third party for use by a government entity in exchange for anything of value. So right now, we have our Fourth Amendment protections here in the United States of America, thank goodness. But one of the ways they circumvent this is by our government buying data from private companies, right? These private companies like Flock, like all these others out there, are collecting so much information about us. And then the government doesn't have to get a warrant because these companies will freely give it to them or freely sell it to them. That's not necessarily a good thing. This is information our government maybe shouldn't have on their own without having to go through a due process of getting a warrant and coming after us that way. But just briefly, here's the bill summary, folks. The bill prohibits law enforcement and other government entities from purchasing or otherwise obtaining for anything of value certain personal data from third parties. Law enforcement agencies and other government entities are also prohibited from sharing individuals' personnel data between themselves. Exceptions are created for obtaining personal data, including after obtaining a judicial warrant, that's good, a subpoena, okay, or court order, all right, when an individual consents to sharing their data, okay, and in case of an emergency involving a threat to a person's life or physical safety. The bill creates a private cause of action for an individual who has their personal data obtained or shared in violation of the prohibitions in this bill. Personnel data obtained or shared is excluded from trial and other court proceedings, subject to certain exceptions. So, very interesting. I'm sure there's some nuance in the bill that people can read if they are interested. But I think this is a good bill for liberty. Ultimately, we have sponsors in both the House and the Senate. And come on, folks, if you've been following Colorado politics or the Colorado legislature, you know that Representative DeGraff is on the money in terms of his values for liberty. So the fact that he's behind this, he votes against his other Republican bills. If this wasn't a good bill, he wouldn't be on it. So that in and of itself, of course, you still got to do the research yourself and read it, but nonetheless, I think it's a really valuable thing. I'll kind of scroll through it slowly here for people to read if they'd like, Michael. But do you want to share your thoughts on this one?
No, I completely agree. This was one of my biggest concerns going to this state legislature or this legislative session was what is going to happen with Flock. Flock is becoming an absolute problem in Colorado, and I absolutely think we need to ban uh, I think we need to ban the private the private public partnership with these surveillance companies and law enforcement. It's a weird and odd way to kind of get around the Fourth Amendment. It's a massive loophole, and I think this bill will it's absolutely going to close that loophole. And I'm really excited about this. And typically, you know me, I'm not a fan of a whole lot of Democrat bills and legislation, but I definitely think, especially with the rubber stamp, with the stamp of approval from Rep. DeGraff, who's the most based legislator in Colorado, in my opinion. I I have trust in this bill, and from reading the bill, I'm very excited about what this is going to do. Absolutely, if there is an issue, get a warrant. Uh, I don't have a problem with it with easy access to an individual warrant in an individual case for this type of technology, but we absolutely need to do something to protect people's rights and all. I think this is the way to go.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's a way to circumvent for law enforcement for the government to circumvent the due process in my mind by just buying bulk data from third parties. And you got to remember, folks, these private companies aren't held to the same standards as our government is in terms of getting our information. So this is like basically in my mind closing a loophole to protect our rights and our privacy. And this is more important than ever, I think, in this day and age where we have so much mass surveillance and all this AI technology and like cameras on every street corner, surveillance systems. It's we got to put a stop to it if you ask me, and I think this is a good step in the right direction. So folks, we will
And
keep you up to date on when these bills are going to be heard and really encourage you to get involved in these committee hearings. Go for it, Michael.
one last thing I want to say about Flock and AI, it's an AI system. AI can hallucinate from time to time. There was a recent situation where Flock misinterpreted a license plate, and the license plate sent a officer to the wrong house, and the officer was caught on a ring camera absolutely berating some woman, a woman up in like I believe it was in the Superior Louisville area. maybe Boulder, but up in that kind of range in Boulder County, up in that area around Broomfield to or Boulder County, absolutely going off on this woman saying, "We know what you did. Don't stop lying. We know exactly what you did. We have it on camera." And it didn't have anything to do with her. So there is definitely a problem with some of this flock surveillance technology and other AI surveillance programs. So it's it's not in a we're not in a position where it's even ready for for public use yet. Yet we're still seeing these cameras pop up all over the country. So it's something to be aware of and pay attention to.
Definitely, folks. And for those of you just joining us, every week, Michael and I look at some of the bills going through our state legislature and provide all the information that you need to have as a citizen to participate in our state government and help us create a free state here in Colorado. We are pushing back against authoritarianism. We are supporting good pro liberty bills, and we're actually going to achieve some policy victories if you and enough other people get involved. So let's talk about another great bill. I'm pretty excited about this one because I know other states in the past have had sales tax holidays. I want to see that become a regular thing in Colorado. This is an extremely limited back to school sales tax holiday that's being sponsored by Representative Ty Winter, the Assistant Minority Leader, and Senator Byron Pelton. Hey, that's fine. Anything that reduces taxes, even in a short term, great. It is a sales and use tax holiday for back to school items. Let's take a look here. So there's the bill, there's the sponsors. Section 1 of this bill creates a time limited state sales and use tax exemption, aka a tax holiday, for back to school items. The tax holiday applies to the last weekend of July 2027 and reoccurs at approximately the same time in 2028 and 2029. A back to school item means an article of clothing, a school supply, or a learning aid that is purchased primarily for use by an individual who is under 21 years old. The exemption for each item is limited by cost as follows: $100 for an article of clothing, $50 for a school supply, $30 for a learning aid. Section 2 permits a town, city, or county to create a tax holiday for back to school items that is identical to the state tax holiday. So of course, love to see this go further. There's some libertarians or people out there who says this doesn't go far enough. It's got to be bigger. It's got to be better. And I agree. Obviously, I'd love to see this expanded, but let's start where we can win. Fight where we can win. Get a tax holiday in the minds of Coloradans in in law that people can support every year and say, hey, this is the price of the good with taxes and without. We start getting into people's mind that taxation is not necessarily a requirement for certain things in our society, right? I got that sign behind me on the wall. It says repeal the food tax, end the food tax. We got to end all the food taxes in Colorado. Hey, let's have a tax holiday there. But this is a good bill that can win, that can start. And hey, it helps out teachers, it helps out students, it helps out schools. How can people be opposed to this? I'm really excited for this one. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, like you said, I wish it would go further. I absolutely love this bill. One area I think that we could really expand this is technology. I know a lot of people, especially in higher grade levels, might need a laptop, for example, to do their homework. And there are a lot. It's harder and harder to live in Colorado, and it's really crippling a lot of families. The cost of living is really crippling a lot of families. So if we could give them additional tax break, for example, on like laptops, I think that would really go a long way to help people, or possibly a tablet. So that way these kids can really excel when it comes to uh, learning, and that way they can build a better basis for their adulthood.
Love it. Yes, let's start this idea of tax holidays here in Colorado. Let's get this in the minds of the people and really push back on this overtaxation that we have or we are facing here and save people some money, deal with this affordability problem like you were saying, Michael. So such a good bill. Really excited to see this one, folks. These are the bills, folks. We're going to keep you up to date every single weekend. We're doing all the work for you. Every Sunday night, we're going to tell you where these bills are at in committee, who you need to contact, how you can get involved, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I like this one too. Here's another good one. Senate Bill 28. I have not seen this one talked about on the news at all. Removal of wind energy from state energy goals. This is from Senator Rod Pelton concerning removal of wind generation as a clean energy source related to the state's clean energy goals. We are in a bad place in Colorado with our overbearing state government trying to force renewable energy on us and cut off all natural use of natural gas. By 2040, we might see, or 2050, and then we might see that moved up to 2040. Who knows? They might even try and move it up further. But nonetheless, this is a bill I think that is kind of in the right direction because they're trying to force this on us, folks, and to say, listen, wind is really not a reliable source of energy, and we got to stop this agenda that's pushing us into this place where we do not have accessible, cheap energy in the form of natural gas and fossil fuels. So this is a step in the right direction. What are your thoughts on this one, Michael?
Oh, I agree. I mean, we see as Reptograph calls the Polish Utility Commission trying to advance their climate goals, their clean energy goals up on us when we're already dealing with costs and really an energy shortage in Colorado. I know, I don't know how many of you guys watched uh, Brandon's interview with Sheriff Mikesell from down in Teller County, but I remember this was back months ago when he first announced his candidacy for governor. And it really stuck out to me when Sheriff Mikesell discussed Colorado's energy crisis that's looming within the next few years. I think it's something that we're not talking about enough in Colorado. Some people are starting to notice when we have these power shutoffs that are basically mandated through the Utility Commission, as well as and have impacted Excel through lawsuits after the Marshall Fire. So I think it's something that we definitely need to be talking about more than we have been in the past. So uh, definitely reach out to your senator and let them know whenever this goes to committee to support this thing because we have a lot of very concerning issues in Colorado, and if we don't put a halt to the advancement of the clean energy goals, it's only going to cripple Coloradans more and more and more. So do what you can, get out there and fight, and let your senators know what you think of this bill.
Well, and what's good about this bill too is it's starting that conversation. It's having that conversation about what our energy needs are as a state in a modern, advanced society, in a modern civilization. What kind of energy we need? We need a lot of energy, and wind isn't going to do it. So let's have that conversation. Let's keep moving here. But another great one here. This one is pretty interesting. This is Senate Bill 22. Challenges meeting the 2030 emissions reduction goal. So let's check this out. This is going to be a hot topic. I didn't dig too much into this one. A little concerned about some of the people that are on it, but let's see what it says here. And then, folks, once fiscal notes are created for these bills, those are always like a little cheat sheet to tell you what they're about. But let's go ahead and read the summary here just briefly. Current law requires certain entities to file a clean energy plan to achieve an 80% decrease in greenhouse gas emissions caused by the entity's electric sales in Colorado by 2030 relative to 2005 levels. Other entities may voluntarily choose to file a plan. Absolutely insane, folks. They want to eliminate all gas emissions in Colorado. That is insanity. That takes us back to Flintstones time. Under current law, no later than March 31st, 2026, an entity required to submit a plan may inform the Division of Administration in the Department of Public Health and Environment in writing the challenges the entity is encountering or expects to encounter in achieving the 80% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. How Soviet style is this, folks? You have these public utility companies who are trying to make a profit, trying to give us energy, and they have to work on these reports to the Department of Public Health and the Environment, telling them why they're not able to achieve these ridiculous goals. But the bill clarifies that an entity that has voluntarily submitted a plan may also inform the division of challenges the entity is encountering or expects to encounter in achieving the 80% reduction by 2030. The bill also extends the deadline which an entity must inform the division from March 31st to May 31st. So, not a great win for victory. Don't get me wrong here, but I think it's kind of getting that conversation going. A cooperative electric association exempted from regulation by the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, or a municipal utility that informs the division of challenges the association or utility is encountering or expects to encounter has until December 31st, 2026 to submit to the division updated plan with the earliest year no later than 2040 that the association or utility expects to be able to achieve the 80% decrease in natural greenhouse gas emissions relative to the 2005 levels without impairing the association's or utility's ability to maintain applicable electric reliability standards and without increasing the association's or utility's average annual electric rates greater than 1.5%. It's all central planning, folks. It's all central planning. This fails every single time. The bill prohibits the Air Quality Control Commission and the division from undertaking any action that impairs the association's or utility's ability to maintain applicable energy reliability standards or increases the association's or utility's average annual electric rates greater than 1.5%. So it's not a perfect bill, obviously, but it moves us in the right direction. It's getting the conversation going, like we were talking about with the last one, and really saying, hey, listen, folks, this might be unrealistic. This might not be right. It's maybe even impossible to have a functioning advanced society, a technological society with these types of ridiculous mandates. So decent bill overall. I think it's probably necessary, but would love to see it go further than this. Any thoughts, Michael?
Last Saturday, I spoke to one of the prime sponsors on this bill, uh, and this is and that last sentence is what we discussed, and I think that's absolutely critical. I think that some of the deadlines in the above paragraphs are not long enough. I think these companies need a lot more time, especially some of the smaller cooperatives that are kind of in these rural areas, unlike the Excels of the world. Um, it's going to be really difficult for these people to make these deadlines, really make these dates. And I think that if we can push, if this bill can pass, we can really push back on a lot of those mandates that they're trying to implement on us. Because as we all know, these bill, these climate agendas are absolutely wild, and they don't care about the consequences. They're going to push forward anyway at the expense of what it's going to do to all of us. So I think a bill like this is, especially with this last sentence, I think it's going to be critical or I think it's going to go a long way to really help them push back against some of these crazies within the Public Utility Commission and the individuals that are promoting a lot of these environmentally environmentalist whack job policies. So I think it's a good start. It's definitely not perfect. They need to extend the dates longer, but we're not going to get everything we need in this legislative session. But I think if this does pass and we can keep that, if we can maintain that last sentence, I think it's a win.
Yeah, we're moving in the right direction. We're getting the conversation going. We're fantasy land ideas that these legislators have and pushing back against their authoritarian attempt to ban natural gas, basically. All right, folks, that was the good. That's all 94 bills I looked at yesterday. Those were the good ones I found. So get ready for the bad ones. We got a little bit of a longer list, just a little bit longer list. So, calm yourself down here, folks. But some interesting stuff. This one was in the news recently, so we'll start there. Of course, immigration, the hottest topic in politics, even in Colorado. Senate Bill 5, rights violation and immigration enforcement remedy. Now, this bill seemingly is unnecessary because it says basically if your constitutional rights are violated, you have recourse. I mean, isn't that already the case? Isn't it supposed to be? But this really bill specifically says that if you're exercising your constitutional rights while somebody's being arrested for immigration enforcement, you can go after them and you can sue them. That's really the idea behind this. Is to, you think about the situation in Minnesota where you have these people out there filming and interfering with ICE. They're trying to do it here as well. Well, this bill provides them more legal protections for the protesters, the activists, the people who are trying to stop federal law enforcement from doing their job. And folks, some of these people are really bad criminals, but nonetheless are pro illegal immigration legislators. Weissman, Julie Gonzalez, and Javier Marbury are all in favor of making Colorado even more of a sanctuary state. And that's what this. Oh, and you can't forget little Yarazoke there. I hate to say little, but well, there you go. The bill creates a statutory cause of action for a person who is injured during a civil immigration enforcement action by another person who, whether or not under color of law. So, if you're a law enforcement, if you violate the United States Constitution while participating in civil immigration enforcement, so I mean, come on, you're not allowed to violate the Constitution already, but they're really trying to create a civil penalty here, it seems. A person who violates the United States Constitution, like maybe stopping somebody from filming or protesting while participating in civil immigration enforcement, is liable to the injured party for legal or equitable relief or any other appropriate relief. The action must be commenced within 2 years. So, somebody out there is filming you and trying to stop you from arresting this guy who's maybe a real criminal, but, he's also in the country illegally. and they can come after you personally, even if you're acting under color of law, you're doing your job. I'm not a big fan of qualified immunity, don't get me wrong, but clearly there's an intention behind this bill that's not really about supporting our constitutional rights. If you ask me, it's a highly politicized subject, and I understand, I'm as skeptical of government power as the next person, but nonetheless, I think this is just the first we've seen so far of really doubling down in Colorado sanctuary state status. Michael, your thoughts?
No, I completely agree. This is absolutely ridiculous. They're trying to get rid of basically qualified community immunity plus is what I would say. I'm very concerned about what that's kind of limited to. I'm very concerned about because it says quote unquote whether or not under color of law. I'm kind of concerned if I'm concerned whether or not that means somebody who calls somebody in. If you know somebody hit like is a child rapist and they're here illegally and you call ICE on them, are you going to also be liable? I'm also concerned about how far they're going to go with the ability to sue somebody. They one of the things they talk about is if you get hurt physically, emotionally, or otherwise. I so because they quote unquote violated your rights. I see that as an excuse to come after somebody for absolutely anything. So if they feel for even if so, what I'm trying to say is, even if you aren't necessarily hurt physically, but you experience quote unquote emotional trauma as you perceive it, they could still you could still go after somebody because you did something to bring ICE in or you reprimanded somebody because of their immigration status. And I'm very, very concerned because a lot of the people that ICE are going after are very terrible people, particularly people who have committed acts of violence, if not sexual assault, against other individuals within this country. So ICE is not perfect. I'm not the biggest fan of ICE, but I'm very concerned about the individuals that are being protected by these anti-ICE legislators.
Yeah, I mean, the whole purpose of this bill is to try and make Colorado more of a sanctuary state. I mean, that's the reality of it, folks. We could get into the details there, but ultimately, I think that's a bad bill. That's one to pay attention to. But we got a few more to talk about, so we're going to keep moving here, folks. Now, this one's controversial, I would say. I don't know if Val's on the stream here, but this is something we talked about previously because she saw this. So Colorado does have legislative committees that meet year round. One of them actually introduced this bill. She caught it this last summer. I'm really excited that she did, or happy that she did. But Senate Bill 21 and Clean Fleet Enterprise replace aging diesel trucks. So, it'll be very interesting to see what people have to say about this stuff, about this one in particular, because you got Carlos Barron, Cleve Simpson, so some Republicans on there who are generally pretty good, with some of the worst Republicans like Kyle Mullica, who's absolute disgrace to Colorado, if you ask me. Um, this bill is a little complicated, but I'll just briefly kind of skim through this here. So this is why there's reasons why people say this is a good bill, which is very interesting. It's going to be, but I want to tell you why I think it's a bad bill. Okay. Currently, the Clean Fleet Enterprise may provide money to help public and private owners and operators of motor vehicle fleets finance acquisitions of compressed natural gas motor vehicles that are trucks if at least 90% of the fuel for that truck will be recovered methane, blah, blah, blah. Pursuant to the current law starting in 2027, the enterprise may only provide money for this purpose so long as the enterprise determines the electric motor vehicles are not yet practically available or do not meet the operational requirements, such as cargo carrying capacity, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this bill repeals that funding limitation. But here's what's interesting here. The bill authorizes the enterprise to incentivize, support, and accelerate the replacement of motor vehicle that uses compression ignition to start the engine, has a gross vehicle weight rating of over 26,000 pounds, is based in the state, and is part of a fleet with in-state annual miles driven of at least 75% of the fleet's total annual miles driven. So that's what they call a heavy-duty truck. That is powered by a diesel-fueled internal combustion engine and is a model year of 2009 or earlier. So that's an aging heavy-duty diesel truck under their definition, with a heavy-duty truck that is a model year of 2018 or later, a new heavy duty truck until December 31st, 2031. The bill also allows the enterprise to provide funding or financing through grant programs, rebate programs, revolving loan funds, or other strategies to help owners and operators of aging heavy duty diesel truck fleets finance the replacement of aging heavy duty diesel trucks with new heavy duty trucks that reduce the upfront cost of acquiring the new heavy duty trucks until December 31st, 2031. So basically, just to condense that for you, summarize it, it's a subsidy. So they're using this taxpayer funded, well, it's an enterprise. So they don't say it's taxes, but it's a fee-driven enterprise, government little operation they got going on to basically rig the market and incentivize industry, so businesses with big fleets of diesel vehicles, to surrender those diesel vehicles. And this is the part I think people are really going to get upset about. But check this out. To qualify for any money provided by the enterprise for the replacement of aging heavy duty diesel trucks with new heavy duty trucks, the purchaser of the new heavy duty truck must surrender an aging heavy duty diesel truck to the seller of the new heavy duty truck at the time of the transaction. And here we go. This is the part that really makes me mad. The seller of the new heavy duty truck must decommission the aging heavy duty diesel truck by drilling a hole in the engine block and cutting the chassis rails in half. Wow. So they're going to destroy possibly perfectly good trucks. But in order to get a subsidy, in order to get government money to buy a new truck. So this is so insidious of how our government works, right? They're basically bribing and helping to pay for the replacement of trucks for newer trucks that they think are more environmentally better, whatever. And they sure maybe they are, they have to destroy an old diesel truck. I mean, this reminds me of like Cash for Clunkers. This is the idea that they're going to destroy perfectly good, what should be used heavy duty diesel trucks for entrepreneurs, for small businesses to buy, for other people to have. They're going to destroy them, take them out of the market, and then basically pay off the new companies by saying, yeah, we're going to actually help subsidize the cost of your new truck. You just got to destroy your old one. So this is total government manipulation of the market. It's not the proper role of government whatsoever. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I can see why people are like, okay, well, this enterprise already exists, right? They're already doing these schemes, right? They're already giving money to these people. This is just going to extend it now to these diesel truck owners, these fleet owners. So they love it. They love this bill because they can actually get some help from the government to upgrade their fleet. They just got to destroy their old ones. So it's total market manipulation. It's not good, folks. I'm really curious to see what people say. I'm going to check the comments here. But Michael, what's your thoughts on this one?
Oh, this is another. Not only is this another climate change grift by the state, as you can see, they're going to destroy vehicles. This is absolutely insane. This is something that um, it, in most situations, if you were to sell a vehicle, for example, I know whether it's a regular car, regular truck, RV, boat, what have you. If you were to trade in a vehicle, what is that dealer going to do? They're going to turn around and they're going to resell it. You're preventing this dealership from being able to resell this vehicle that they sold to somebody else. And on top of that, you're also requiring them to do a bunch of additional labor that could have been well spent getting that truck in, prepared to go back on the lot so that way somebody, or send it to auction so that way somebody else could turn around and buy it. This is a very I think in my opinion this is detrimental to dealerships everywhere. Another thing to talk about is enterprises. Enterprises are basically government run businesses. And what happens when government run businesses what happens when government run businesses fail? They don't actually fail. They just take general fund money and then put it inside the enterprise to go ahead and run it anyway. And then whenever it comes around to discussing Tabor in the General Assembly, the Democrats complain and move the goalposts, gaslight Republicans by telling Republicans if it wasn't for Tabor, we wouldn't have to have enterprises. Well, it's just instead of running an enterprise, why don't you let something that clearly does not work in the private sector, in the free market, an enterprise, um, die? It shouldn't work because if it was going to work, if your little theory, if your little agenda was going to work, the free market would absolutely be doing it on its own today, but it doesn't. So, I'm very concerned about this grift. I don't like that it has bipartisan uh, leadership. I don't like that bipartisan leadership is on board with this bill either. I very disappointed in that, but it is what it is. And if you have the opportunity, send an email out to these legislators and let them know don't support this bill. Let them know your reasons why. And when it comes to giving this bill a proper hearing, uh, don't support this bill.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scheme, and it just for me, at least, it shows how insidious our state government is, right? I mean, they come up with all these little schemes to buy industry support, right? So they don't get all those people opposing them. Hey, we're going to help you do this. We're going to help you pay for replacing your fleet with more cleaner vehicles. We just got to destroy the old ones. It's total market manipulation. It's public-private partnerships. It's the worst kind of government we have, and it's of course these types of bills that you'll see Republicans jump on. So bad stuff, folks. Let's jump on here. Senate Bill 4, expand list of petitioners for a protection order. Gosh, this is the bill that's going to expand red flag gun confiscation in Colorado, making it easier by giving a list to more individuals. More individuals will have the right to petition a court to take your guns away. Not good, folks. Tom Sullivan, one of the worst legislators Colorado's ever seen, and Meg Froglips, I mean, Froelich down there, absolutely terrible. Glad that's her last year there. I'm pretty sure she's running for state senate, though. That's really sad. But the bill adds a healthcare facility that employs a healthcare professional or mental health professional and a co-responder as part of the co-responder community response to the list of community members who may petition the court for an extreme risk protection order. The bill adds healthcare facilities, behavioral health treatment facilities, K through 12 schools, and institutions of higher education as institutional petitioners. They may petition a court for extreme risk protection order. So imagine we got these. I mean, folks, I don't know. You're on. I know a lot of people here are on X. They're on social media a lot. You see some people who are like in the mental health industry or the mental health field, and these are some of the craziest people you'll ever see in terms of their ideological beliefs, like extremists. And now let's give them the ability to ask a judge to take your guns away. And remember, these are ex parte trials, so it's a secret court where you do not have the ability to represent yourself, to present your case. It's just if the judge agrees with this K through 12 school person or mental health care professional or whatever the heck, they can just show up at your doors, please say we're confiscating your firearms, and there we go, folks. So bad news, really bad stuff. Jared Polis in the State of the Stage address was bragging. However, there's been over 400 red flag gun confiscations. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's some bad people who are probably going to do some bad things. That's good you got their guns away from them. Don't get me wrong, but the free society we live in should not permit this type of thing where you have it in the secret ex parte trial without you to be able to say there and have all these people conspiring behind your back to take your firearms away. Bad news, folks. My blood pressure is going up just thinking about this. What do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. I mean, as you said, as we talked about earlier with Bradley and Brooks's phenomenal repeal bill on the 2A bills of the last few years, they're trying to nickel and dime us again and again and again. And this is just another step towards nickel and diming everybody away from their Second Amendment rights. They're going to use every single possible thing they can to take our gun rights away. And they, as you know, the left doesn't do it swiftly. They do it slowly, and they'll do it here, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, a little bit there, and next thing you know, you don't have your rights anymore. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited to see how many people show up to the Capitol. One of the two biggest things that really animate people in Colorado to show up at the Capitol are anti-gun legislation as well as parental rights legislation. So the moment they try to strip our rights, people really show up, and that gets me excited. So I'm really excited to see how many people show up to fight this bill whenever we do get our hearing. So as you can see, I mean, they've really expanded the amount of people um, who can call in a ex parte trial, and I'm very concerned about that.
Yeah, here you go, folks. A licensed healthcare professional or mental health professional who, through a direct professional relationship, provided care to the respondent or the respondent's child within 6 months before requesting the protection order. So, this counselor at your kid's school, if your kid's saying stuff that the counselor doesn't like, if your kid's mad at you, if these things happen, this person at the school could ask the judge to take your guns away. I mean, it is insane. And we know there's some insane people working in these positions. The mental health facility, healthcare facility, just if they've been provided care to your child within the last 6 months, they now will have the ability to ask the court. Folks, we got to show up for this one. We got to speak out. We got to really control the conversation about our gun rights ultimately and about parental rights. And look at this, an educator, including community college, area technical college, all these different people at all these different schools. Get your kids out of school. Don't interact with these entities as much as possible. That's really the answer here, folks. And it's absolutely disgusting to see this expansion of red flag gun confiscation. Bad news, folks. But let's move on. We got plenty to talk about here. Protections for worker safety. My goodness. My goodness. Little Manny Rutinell is running for Congress. Doesn't have a chance, if you ask me. Elizabeth Valesco, two people who probably actually never worked a real job in their lives, saying we need to have more worker safety. Now, of course, folks, of course, people should be safe. We don't like that. Nobody likes that. Businesses don't like that. They don't want their employees getting hurt. Don't get me wrong. But this is the type of legislation, these are the type of laws that infringe on our rights, make it so difficult for businesses to operate, especially small businesses. We don't need this stuff. I'm not going to read through all this one, but just in on its face, it's a bad bill, folks. I hate OSHA. OSHA should be abolished at the federal level. We don't need these little tyrants here in Colorado trying to force people to do all these little things and saying, oh, there's a recognized hazard in your place. And now we got to have the attorney general coming after you. And then you get vindictive employees who are filing things and going after. And it's like, they're just making it so difficult for businesses to operate, folks. And the best part of it is, I know Forrest Mommy's going to love it because she was complaining about enterprises a minute ago. This bill creates a workplace health and safety fund into which the penalties collected pursuant to the bills are credited. The money in the fund can be used to all do all this little stuff here. So it's like more money going to the grift. And of course, it's probably going to go to their little nonprofit buddies who are going to help the workplace safety and help them go after businesses and all this little garbage. So there you go, folks. Michael, your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree. Uh, I don't know, Brandon, how familiar you are with John Stossel's story. Uh, Back in the late 80s, he used to be this big liberal, and then he really started, and his whole shtick was he used to win a lot of Emmy Awards because he was concerned about consumer protection. And then the more he researched consumer protection, uh, the more conservative he got and the more libertarian he got. And now the left doesn't want anything to do with him because he's no longer a leftist, because he finally figured out stuff like consumer protection bills, particularly OSHA. When he dug into OSHA, that was eye-opening to him, and how the free market was basically making occupational safety and health a bigger and bigger priority. And all of these OSHA and all of OSHA's bills didn't really do anything to make anything safer. Yet what they did do is cost these companies a lot of money that they didn't necessarily need to spend, because the free market was already doing the job that government was pretending to do on its own. So this just hurts. This hurts companies, this hurts employees, this hurts the ability for us to become a safer uh, country on our own, safer state on our own. So is it doesn't even do the job that they intend to do. But for somebody like Manny Rutinell, who's running for Congress, as you said, this is going to make him look great, especially to leftists who say, when he wants to get out in the campaign trail, say, "I care about people. I care about you. I made your workplace a safer place to be in Colorado," when he actually didn't do crap. So this is definitely another bill. It's a messaging bill for Manny Rutinell's campaign when you really think about it. So definitely oppose it if you have the opportunity to.
Yeah, if there's no standard in effect for OSHA, the state government's going to create one. So OSHA's not bad enough, folks. The state government thinks they should have more protections in place. Bad news here. Now, of course, transportation network companies, your Uber, your Lyft, etc., even DoorDash have been a huge target for the authoritarian Democrats in our state government, and they're going after them again this year with House Bill 1043. The discriminatory practices here. They're discriminating too much. These rideshare companies are just totally discriminating, and we need to make this bill so it's easier to go after these companies. They don't need to have written notice anymore. They can go after them for all this discrimination. So we're going to basically create all these little government tipsters calling in saying, yeah, oh yeah, the Lyft driver discriminated against me and they need to be fined $550 and this and that and this and that. It's just like, folks, it's just nonstop. Bad news. Gretchen Rydin, get control of yourself here and get the heck out of our government because this is bad news. And nonetheless, folks, I mean, how many lives have rideshare companies saved over the years in terms of drunk driving? And of course, they're going against them because I don't know. I've never heard of this discrimination happening. Sure, don't get me wrong. Maybe it happens, right? But nonetheless, some of these rideshare drivers have a tough time as it is. Bad news, folks. Bad news. Michael, what do you think?
My opinion is this is a lobbyist bill, given to Gretchen Rydin. I mean, there's not really any. You'll notice there's only her on the bill as a prime sponsor, nobody else. She doesn't have any none of leadership is really supporting this. She doesn't have any support in the Senate. I am honestly surprised if she did get anybody, it might be Wilford, because as we all know, she tried to attack rideshare companies last year, and I believe that her bill was vetoed by Polis, if I remember correct. I if it, yeah, I believe it was Wilford's bill was vetoed by Polis, and that's because Uber was going to get out of Colorado if this bill wasn't vetoed. So almost lost Uber in this state, and that would have been a real concern for everybody because that means that Lyft would have gone up in price. And I don't know if you guys have ever worked for Uber or Lyft, but a lot of drivers will switch between the two companies depending on what the rates are given them. So I'm very concerned about what they could be doing to Uber and Lyft, and the fact that um, this might make the remaining people that are working for the remaining rideshare companies, it might force them to end up losing money because they're not going to be able to make as much because depending on what time or what area you're in, you're going to make more or less money. So I'm very concerned about that. The other thing that I want to point out with this bill is if you've ever taken, I don't know if you've ever, everybody here has taken rideshare in the past, whether it's Uber or Lyft, but when you get in as a driver, or whether you're a driver or you are a rider, you have the opportunity to, as a rider, rate the driver, and as a driver, rate the customer. So if somebody is harassing, they're doing a lot of inappropriate stuff in your vehicle, you can give them a negative review. So I could see this being a way to eliminate that customer rating, and then in turn force these drivers for these rideshare companies to end up not having as enjoyable of experience because these drivers are letting individuals into their cars for a price, and you need to make sure that you're, as a customer or a rider, you need to make sure that you're treating that driver's vehicle with respect because that's their own personal vehicle that they're allowing you to ride in for a certain amount of time. And if you're being disrespectful, if you're damaging property, you need to be reported. That needs to be made known to other drivers. And I could see this being used to manipulate other drivers to not being um, by using this bill underhandedly to complain about quote unquote discrimination when at the end of the day, you're just not treating these people with respect and treating their vehicles with respect.
Yeah, I mean, look at this. This is what they're eliminating in the law, folks. This is what they're striking out of current law, that a transportation network company is not liable for a driver's violation of subsection 6. So basically, they're creating this whole new situation in which a driver shall immediately report to the transportation network company any refusal to transport a passenger pursuant to the subsection, and the transportation network company shall report all such refusals to the commission on a monthly basis in a form and manner determined by the commission. So you're increasing the cost for these transportation network companies to operate. You're making it much more difficult, more expensive. It's a dumb bill. I really hope if this one ends up passing, that Jared Polis vetoes it, because this is a bad bill. It's going to hurt transportation network companies in Colorado. And folks, nobody's forcing you to use them. Nobody's forcing you to use them. We don't need to have all these ridiculous requirements on them. But let's keep going here. Oh my gosh, check this one out, folks. You have a vacant property, the government wants to tax it. House Bill 1036, local taxes on vacant residential property. This is insane, folks. This is absolutely and utterly insane. We got Brian Titone and Elizabeth Valesco there, two of the worst down at the legislature, authorizing a local government to impose taxes on vacant residential properties, and in connection therewith, allowing a local government to levy an excise tax based on the characteristics of a residential property, allowing a local government to create a new property tax classification for vacant residential properties, and levy an additional property tax on those properties, and allowing local governments to contract to form a local housing tax authority. This is insanity, folks. You think housing is expensive now? Wait till this passes. Of course, they would say it does the opposite because now they're going to try and force property owners to have people staying in their vacant properties. Folks, if you own a second home, you own a property up in the mountains, and you want to not necessarily have somebody there all the time, that is your right. This is insanity. So now you're going to have, of course, all these local municipalities and little governments, counties coming around checking, oh, is your property vacant? Oh, is your property vacant? I mean, this is insanity, folks. You have a right to privacy. The government has no right for this, and it's insane. And of course, they're going to use all this money for affordable, attainable, and workforce housing. Absolutely crazy. Bad news bears. Get this the heck out of there, folks. This one needs to be fought back against tremendously. This, I mean, for this, there's so many reasons why Tatone should never even run for any other office. But if you need a reason, this one's good enough, if you ask me. Plenty of reasons there. Michael, what do you think?
No, I completely agree. This is ridiculous. I think this is going to cause a lot of harm to the housing market. And honestly, I think that's what they are planning to do. They don't want people who are using these properties to be innovative in a new, unique way that we haven't seen before. For example, like you said, if somebody wants to, whether or not somebody might be part of like Airbnb, or they might have their property on Verbo, and there might be long stretches of time where that the property is vacant. Guess what? They're going to try to use this bill to, if not in this bill, in an upcoming legislation, tax those people at a higher rate. When a lot of times Verbo and Airbnb, in my opinion, are they're not necessarily owned by these big companies like the government has already given um, millions and millions of dollars to. They're owned by people like you and me, Brandon, who might have a second home. Who I don't personally have a second home, but they're going to be people like all of us that are on the street. They might have or the stream right now. They might have a second home that they might have not necessarily know what to do with. It might be a apartment that they might be renting out. It's absolutely ridiculous what they're trying to impose on everybody. Also, it might not be the most beneficial thing for a property owner to rent that property out. Or, as you said, Brandon, earlier, it could be a second vacation home. A lot of people in Colorado also, there are a lot of people who are a little bit more well off who have a second vacation home, especially up in the mountains, or it's something that that was given to them through inheritance by a family member who passed away.
Insanity, folks. If you don't want to stay in your house, they want to give these local governments the ability to tax that house. Absolutely crazy, folks. And then create new property tax. I mean, they're going to increase prices. They're going to make it more expensive. Creates a process for the creation of a local housing tax authority by intergovernmental agreement. Two or more counties, cities, or counties or municipalities to form a joint taxing authority to collectively establish, levy, collect, and enforce local taxes on vacant residential properties within the boundaries of the authority. And it does say that this does not include short-term rental units.
Okay,
It
good.
does say that. But it's still insane. It's absolutely and utterly insane. It's a vacant residential property and it's unoccupied. It's not a short-term rental. Then the county can come after you. So you have these little county tax assessors driving around seeing if anybody's staying there. Insanity, folks. Total violation of our property rights. Absolutely disgusting. These people should be run out of government. Have no place in a free society for sure for this type of garbage. So let's move on, folks. Plenty more to talk about. Consumer protections to promote fair market pricing. This is that little Zoke bill with Kyle Brown, Lindstedt, and Weissman. Some of the worst down there, folks. Like you see their names on something, you just know it's going to be bad. It's like my stomach sinks whenever I see their names on a bill. Consumer protections to promote fair market pricing. House Bill 1012. In 2025, the General Assembly enacted House Bill 1090, which requires clear and conspicuous disclosures regarding the maximum total price charged for goods, services, and property. The bill adds a requirement that a person selling goods for delivery must disclose at the point of sale a comparison of the total price for the delivered goods and the total price of the goods available for purchase on site at a store. The bill prohibits a person from charging unreasonably excessive prices to a captive consumer and defines captive consumer as a consumer who is at the location at which the seller of ancillary goods or services does not have competitors regarding the ancillary goods or services being sold. A person that charges unreasonably excessive prices to a captive consumer engages in an unfair, deceptive trade practice in violation of the Colorado Consumer Protection Law. It's insanity, folks. It's price controls. It's a scheme in which the state government tells the businesses how they can charge prices. Bad news. It's a total attack on the free market, total attack on private businesses. And I get it. I mean, we've seen articles come out where they're saying, oh, yeah, you had DoorDash or whatever charging different, these grocery store delivery apps, they're charging different prices to different customers based on information they had on those customers. Well, it's like, folks, nobody's forcing you to use those things. If you think it's a reasonable price and you're willing to pay for it, then people are buying it. I never use any of those delivery things because I think it's unreasonable as it is for the price. It's not necessary for me. But other people, if they're like, hey, I'm willing to pay extra money to have this thing delivered to my house or do this or that, fine, let them, whatever. It's insanity, bad news. It's so stupid. These people are so economically ignorant. It's ridiculous. What do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. I think it's I think it's ridiculous. Again, they're trying to run a lot of these delivery services out of business. And one thing to consider when it comes to especially when it comes to food delivery services, there's a lot of people that might not be able to get food by a certain amount of time. So they might need to use an Instacart. They might need to use DoorDash. They might need to use Uber Eats for the grocery order, etc. There's a lot of different programs that are out there for a lot of people, especially the underserved and not necessarily underserved communities, but people who have a lot of who are handicapped, who have a lot of health issues that might not be able to make it out to the store. So this is going to hurt, and that's what's so funny to me about this because they're going to drive these businesses away, so they're going to have no more option while they're trying to pretend to protect the people that they say are the most impacted by these types of price gouging services. When it's better to have the service than no service whatsoever.
Right, and this bill singles out. So they're calling it captive consumer markets an airport, a hospital, emergency room, an event venue with 2,000 or more individuals, and organized outdoor events such as a fair or festival with more than 2,000 attendees, a correctional facility. So all these places, they're going to say, listen, you can't charge them more than the average price offered for a comparable good or service sold in the county in which they purchase it. So you're like, okay, you're at the airport. You know how expensive it is to operate at the airport, the people you have to hire, and the wages you have to pay to get people to drive out to work at the airport. Well, you're going to say you cannot sell higher priced goods than if they go down to the supermarket down the street. It's like, well, people who are in the airport aren't going to go drive to the supermarket down the street. And sure, that's a captive market. Sure, goods cost a little bit more. We all know that going there voluntarily. It's insane, folks. This is so stupid. And what are they going to do with like a sports venue? They're going to say you can't sell beer for too high of a price. Like it's insane. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense, and it's dumb. It's dumb. That's all you can say, folks. It's so stupid, but crazy stuff, folks. We got to get involved. We got to get out there and have a voice. We have to speak out. I know people feel discouraged, but you got to reach out. You got to have a voice. Could you imagine this bill passes and nobody even spoke against it? And then little Zoke says, gets on her little TikTok and says, "Oh yeah, everybody loves my, price bill or whatever." It's like, no, folks, we have to have a voice. We have to speak up. We have to get out there and talk about things. Now, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of people like pets in Colorado. I like pets, but they want to ban pet stores in Colorado from selling pets. This is House Bill 1011. Duran, McCormick, and Rodriguez. Basically, they want to say that only certain people should be able to sell animals in Colorado. Absolutely and utterly insane. This bill basically would say that a pet store in Colorado would not be to sell or offer for sale dogs or cats. That's it. In 2027, a pet store is no longer permitted to sell, lease, offer to sell, or lease, barter, auction, or otherwise transfer ownership. I don't know if anybody's ever leased a dog or a cat, but apparently that's the language. You can't lease a cat or a dog anymore. You can't buy a dog or a cat at a pet store starting in 2027 with this bill. I think this is stupid. I think this is bad stuff. The only people who are going to be able to do it are like animal shelters and things like that. Of course, there's all these exceptions for it, blah blah blah. If you're a breeder of the dog, if it's an animal shelter or a pet animal rescue, but basically they are just eliminating pet stores in Colorado. That's the idea. They don't want people to be able to sell pets in Colorado. We saw a bill like this last year that was really disappointing to pass. But yeah, stupid stuff, folks. Not the proper legal government. This is not what they should be doing. It is actually insane. What do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. I know Bombshell has a great comment. Go after the mills, not after the store owners. This is ridiculous. I mean, just because um, just because there are certain pets that might be mistreated, that doesn't mean that every single pet store is mistreating all animals. This is just an attack on pet stores, and it's completely unnecessary. And yeah, it's completely unnecessary. And I don't know, understand the reasoning or the political reasoning of attacking pet stores. I mean, everybody loves going to the pet store. Everybody loves getting food for the animals. People love seeing the pets there. I mean, and it's really sad that sometimes, yeah, I mean, some of them might have too small of a cage, but at the same time, they're still providing a service for these for a lot of these animals, and they're trying to help do what's right for especially the community. And this is going to limit a lot of access for a lot of people who might not be able to get a pet otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about this bill. I don't understand where they think that they have the right to even come to introduce legislation like this.
Yeah, they're ridiculous. Here we go, folks. They're bringing back Senate Bill 5 from last year, the one Jared Polis vetoed, basically creating easier for unions to muscle people into joining the union, forcing them to pay dues with only a simple majority vote instead of the two-thirds vote or three-fourths vote. I don't remember which is required currently. House Bill 1005, worker protection collective bargaining. This is ridiculous. A lot of people are even asking, like, why are they even sponsoring this year? They know Jared Polis would veto it again, or supposedly. Maybe they're working on a deal behind the scenes. I don't know, but at the same time it would they were talking about waiting till next year, but nonetheless they want to make it easier so that there's no second election. It's easier for people to get into unions, and then you're forced to give up part of your paycheck to these union bosses that are explicitly political, that use money to fund campaigns like the people listed here. I mean, say what you want about unions, folks, but the reality is unions in Colorado, they're using that money, that union dues, for bad political purposes, to increase the size and scope of government, increase our taxes, and take away our liberty. So whatever you want to say about unions, folks, the facts are the facts, and that's how it goes. And really disappointed that this bill's coming back this year. Won't spend a lot of time on it because it was talked about so much last year, but absolutely crazy. What do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. I mean, I'm frustrated that this one came back. I do think it's interesting that this bill was introduced right at the very beginning of the legislature last year, but excuse me, they couldn't come to a deal. They couldn't make this thing work, and it pretty much died at the very end of the legislature, if I remember correctly. Or did this? Or now, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that this one actually passed, but if it did, Polis vetoed it. But I don't think this one was vetoed by Polis. I believe it just died at the very end of the legislative session last year.
Yeah, vetoed by Governor 5/16/2025. Got to pull up
Oh,
on
it
my other
did.
screen there. Yep,
Okay.
and some of the same people sponsoring this bill. It's a disgrace, and I'm really hoping that business owners wake up. And don't get me wrong, I know you know how bad it is in Colorado. I completely understand that, but we have to be more active. We have to get involved. We have to find good efforts that we can fund to get some of these people out of office, because this is not going to end. Bad news there, folks. So that's what we got for bad bills. There's probably some more in there. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. There's plenty of other choices, but those are some of the highlights, some of the big ones that people really need to pay attention to. If there's others, please let us know. I'd love to see it. But I really want to share. This is something I think is going to be really interesting for people, because we've seen the good bills, we've seen the bad bills. We know where Colorado's going, but we know it can change. Colorado will change. We will be a free state. Just a question of when. I truly believe here in 2026 that we can flip 5 House seats. Let's get 5 Democrats out, 5 Republicans in, and flip 3 Senate seats. Would that change the majority? No. Would it make a huge dent? Yes. Would it stop some of the worst legislation? Yes. Would it restore a lot of common sense and totally shift the dynamic in our state government in the entire state of Colorado? Yes. We'd have more business friendly practices, less infringements on our rights, and it would be a good thing overall. We win by small steps, folks. Small steps. Okay, so here they are, folks. Now, the reason I'm asking for your help here. I'm asking for your help. Track these legislators. Track them on social media. Track them in committee hearings. Track them on the floor. See how they vote. Keep a list. We got to keep lists of how they vote, what they say. Do they say something stupid? Are they acting inappropriately in the legislature? Is there something we can nail them on come election time? So Katie Stewart down in southwestern Colorado, down in the Durango area, only won by 1,319 votes, folks. 1,319 votes. That's it. That is a razor thin margin when you really think about it. She can be defeated. I know that there is a couple candidates running down there. I'm just looking at my board over here. I got Naomi Rice, I think it is. Naomi Reese, I think, is the one that I saw running that I checked last time I checked. So there is a good opportunity to flip this seat here in 2026. I don't know anything about the current candidate, but nonetheless, this is a seat we have to pay attention to. Katie Stewart needs to be held accountable, and every move she makes down at the legislature this year needs to be watched. Take those clips, share them, let me know. What's really interesting is that seat between 2022 election and 2024 election, the Republican candidate in that 2 years picked up 5,000 votes, just about 5,000 votes. So that is a massive swing from 2022 to 2024, where we saw a Republican candidate get 5,000 more votes, and Katie Stewart barely got elected with 1319. So huge opportunity here, folks. This is something I think we really need to pay attention to, and we really need to direct our focus towards getting some of these bad legislators out. So what do you think, Michael?
No, I agree. I really like that we're going over this. Katie Stewart is somebody who in 1 year has demonstrated that she very much has an extreme agenda for Colorado, and I don't necessarily think that her views represent southeastern Colorado. This is right in the same general area as Larry Don Sukla. So I don't necessarily see how people that would support Larry Don Sukla would necessarily support somebody like Katie Stewart. So make sure you're watching, make sure you're paying attention, and let people, especially if you know people out in Southwest Colorado, people who know, people that you know in her district, keep them informed. Let them know, make them aware of some of the crazy legislation that Katie Stewart is going to support this legislative session. Let them, as
Exactly,
well as their
Michael.
votes.
Well, yeah, and we saw a lot of these bills. They're all going to committee hearings, right? They all go to committees. So Katie Stewart's in some of these big committees down there, and all of them are. We're going to talk about all the committees these people are in. Take screenshots here. Save this. It's on YouTube. But if a bill is going through a controversial bill is going through one of these committees, pay attention to how they vote, and we got to use it against them. Make some noise come election time. That's what it's going to come down to, folks. The next one, Bob Marshall. There he is, 1,373 votes in 2024. He's on the Business Affairs and Labor Committee and the Finance Committee. And it's very interesting. Bob Marshall is relatively moderate. Don't get me wrong. We've seen him stand up for our taxpayers' Bill of Rights in that committee hearing last year that I was down there. So he's moderate on some levels. He's been against some of the most extreme gun stuff, but nonetheless, folks, we need to get him out. We need to get somebody in there who's actually going to be supporting good bills like the Second Amendment Protection Act. Other things like that. This is Highlands Ranch. This is Lone Tree area, folks. This is that southern part of the metro area that really is mostly conservative. We just need a good candidate to show up and get involved. Last I heard, there's somebody named Nate Marsh who's registered. Don't know him. Don't know if he's a good candidate or not. But nonetheless, an important seat to flip. Pay attention to Bob Marshall this year, folks. We are getting dirt and tracking what these legislators are doing, and we are going to flip these seats come November, God willing. Michael, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I mean, I think it's important that you bring up that he's the quote unquote that he's moderate on some issues, but he's still not moderate on every issue. Look at his votes on 1309 and 1312, for example. While he is while he quote unquote campaigned to be good on guns, he is not good on parents and protecting children from this crazy agenda that's harming our kids in our state. That's incredibly concerning to me, especially as a parent.
100%, 100%. Next one on the hit list here, the target list, the political list. Don't take that the wrong way, folks. It's all about politics. It's all about the elections here. House District 46, Tisha Maru. She won by 2,077 votes in 2024 on the Agriculture, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, the Business Affairs and Labor Committee. Pay attention to what bill she's sponsoring, how she's voting, and what's going on. Pueblo is such an interesting case, folks. This seat the Republican candidate picked up 900 votes between 2022 and 2024. Pueblo County went for Trump in both 2016 and in 2024. Not a massive margin, don't get me wrong, but we're talking 2,000 votes here. There's a controversial legislative session where Tisha Morrow makes some bad moves. The voters need to know about it. We got to get her out, and I think there's an incredible opportunity down there. We actually have down running against Tisha Morrow. Can't see it from where I'm at here. House District 46. Oh, there it is. It's either Post or Champion are the two I think who are running that I've seen. So there's a Republican primary there. It's going to be really talked about, but get involved, especially if you live in that part of the state or know people down there, folks. This is where the rubber meets the road, where we can have an active say in the future of Colorado. Michael, what do you think?
One unique thing that's going on in Colorado is while everything's turning blue, Pueblo's turning red. So if you know somebody within the Pueblo GOP and you know and they don't necessarily know enough about Tisha Morrow, help inform them, help spread the word about what she's doing in the legislature. Because as Brandon's saying, if we can get the word out, especially if she makes a bad choice on a parental rights issue or a terrible on a gun vote or a terrible vote on a gun bill, light her up. Let everybody know what's going on and help get Tisha Morrow out of Senate excuse me House District 46.
Definitely. Next one we really want to pay attention to is Eliza Hamrick, House District 61. I mean, look at this, folks. This is that southeastern part of the Centennial area, north of Parker, very what would normally be considered a Republican area. This is, and I don't want to say anything bad about the Republican Party of Colorado because I know they all have their internal problems. Don't get me wrong. We have the same in the Libertarian Party. But folks, in 2022, this was one of the most winnable seats. Hamrick won by 1,172 votes. And then guess what? In 2024, nobody ran. No Republican candidate ran whatsoever. And she flew in. One of the most competitive seats in all of Colorado, a year when Republicans picked up 3 state House seats. Nobody ran in the next most likely to flip. So we need to change that this year. House District 61, I got to check it again. I haven't seen a candidate listed. Maybe I'll pull up Tracer real quick. But we got to pay attention to Hamrick. We got to keep an eye on her and get her out of there, folks. Flipping 5 seats in the state legislature this year in the state house would be phenomenal. Michael, what do you think?
I agree. It'd be amazing to see the legislature flip. This is definitely a winnable seat. If you know somebody, I've only heard rumors about a couple possibilities for 61, but at the end of the day, I still haven't seen anybody put their name in the ring for House District 61. And it's again very winnable. You know somebody, reach out, let them know that they have an opportunity to really help Colorado out.
Yep, I just pulled her up. Nobody is running. Nobody is registered to run with the Secretary of State in Colorado. There's 21 Republicans running for office, for governor's office, excuse me, and not a single person apparently lives in House District 61, which is an extremely winnable seat. So much
And
opportunity here, folks.
and
We
her
can
record's
this
not
one
good.
No, her record's bad. This one can turn around. Totally unopposed last year. There's a huge, huge chance. I don't. Five Pilot says wasn't there a reason no GOP ran? I have no idea. I didn't hear that. I thought they just couldn't find a candidate, from what I understood. But there needs to be a candidate, somebody who's willing to step up and run for office there. So huge. You have to live in that district. Don't give if you want to run, but a big one. And then House District 32, I think, is flippable, and it's actually probably good that there's not an incumbent. Manny Rutnell is running for Congressional District 8 choice. I think hopefully starting to regret. I don't think he's got a chance. Be very interesting to watch that race. But I think House District 32, there's a good opportunity there. He did win unopposed. I don't even remember if Manny Rutnell's ever won an election because I think he was appointed, if I'm not mistaken, and then nobody ran against him in 2024. I want to say that's what the case, but 2,740 votes in 2022. Don't get me wrong, it's a little bit of more of a stretch than the other ones we've looked at tonight. Still under 3,000 votes. It's kind of that you can see the area there north of I-70, southeast of Highway 85. So kind of that northeastern part of the metro area, not really metro anymore, south of Brighton, Commerce City area, that kind of place. But I think there's a good opportunity there for Coloradans to have an impact, to flip, to get somebody in that seat. It's going to be an extremely hard fought primary on the Democratic side, so it'll be very interesting to see who emerges from that. I think the front runner, if I'm not mistaken, when I was looking the other day, is Van Dyke, Van Dyke. I don't know how you say it. Van Dyke, and then I heard there's a Republican named Fred Alfred who's running, who is active on social media. Definitely need to talk to him, but I think there's a good opportunity there. There. What do you think, Mike?
I definitely think that we get somebody better in this seat as well. 2,700 votes is not that many. And I especially for somebody who's kind of in the southeast, kind of what is I believe if I remember correctly, that's kind of the that's kind of next to Commerce City, a little bit south of there. I don't think that is Commerce City yet, is it?
I think it might be considered Commerce City, but I'm not sure exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that's going to be a winnable seat. You see, I mean, it's also north of DIA. It's a pretty big gap. Uh, this also covers the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, if I'm seeing that correctly. So I definitely think this would be a huge pickup, huge win for Colorado if we get a extremist like Manny Rutnell out of this seat. And I know he's not coming back. He's not going to be rerunning for this seat specifically. But if we could make sure that another extremist does not replace him, that's going to be a huge win for Colorado.
Yeah, there's this Chris Van Dyke guy. I think that's how you say his name, Deke. I don't know, but he's got all the big endorsements. I looked at his website, but there's two other Democrats running in the primary, so it's going to be hard fought. And then Fred Alfred is the only Republican running so far, so that could be a good thing. But yeah, looking at the map, it's definitely Commerce City, Derby, Western Hills, that kind of area. So just west of the airport, really. But incredible opportunity, and it's crazy. I just looked at Manny Rutnell. He's never actually He's never won a campaign running against somebody. He was appointed into that seat and then he won in 2024. Nobody ran against him. So now he's running for Congress. Nobody's even run against him, but he's never actually run a competitive race. So very interesting stuff there, folks. But I think there's a good opportunity there. Let's talk about the three Senate districts. I think this is huge. So if we really need to flip 6 seats, right, to really transform the majority there. But 3 seats would still do wonders in the state Senate, and I think they're extremely possible. So this is Senate District 15 up in so west of Fort Collins, but northern Colorado, Estes Park, kind of part of Loveland, big chunk of Loveland, west of Longmont, west of Boulder. She only won so Senate's every 4 years, right? The House is every 2 years, the Senate's every 4 years. So we have half of the Senate up this year, half the Senate up, every single House seat's up this year. These are the most competitive seats in my mind. So Senate District 15, she won by 1,014 votes, 1,014 votes in 2022. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of reasons to think that some of that area has become more liberal, but this is really excluding Fort Collins proper, folks. It's more of the mountain communities, kind of that Red Feather, Estes Park. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sure that it's full of conservatives or liberty-minded people, but if you're talking 1,000 vote swing with everything that's been happening here in Colorado, there's opportunity, huge opportunity there. So, and Marchman has been on the worst bill. She was on Senate Bill 3, 1312. Some of this stuff that's the most egregious legislation we've ever seen infringing on our rights in Colorado, and she is front and center, not even unapologetically sponsoring it. So keep an eye out for her. We got to build that list longer of all her misdeeds and make sure the voters are aware. What do you think, Michael?
No, I think it's one thing that's important to point out with these Senate races is these are bigger geographical regions, a lot big of a much bigger population size than like a district. So 1,014 votes is more like what would you say like a 500 vote total win in House district. So I really see this as a very, very winnable district. And besides, as you were talking about, there are some liberal pockets, Ward, Nederland, Estes Park. But you're also talking about a lot of very rural, very conservative areas in this region. And I definitely think this is a very winnable seat for Republicans. They just need to make sure that they have quality, a quality candidate, and they can actually absolutely take this seat back.
Yeah, and it's Rob Woodward, who is formerly who was the state senator there, the Republican state senator, until he lost 4 years ago by 1,000 votes. So he's running again, Rob Woodward. Really excited for his election. He's been a senator already. He's got good name recognition. He's a legitimate guy. He had a good pro-liberty record, from what I could tell, at least. And I think there's an incredible opportunity there. So just barely lost. Of course, every 10 years in Colorado, you're redistricting. So it really changes up the Senate districts up basically, after 2 terms. So he won with a landslide pretty much in 2018, but then the district got redesigned after the 2020 census, and he barely lost in 2022. So a lot of opportunity there, folks. If you live in that area, and I know some of the people watching do, like me and even me up here in Greeley, I'm going to try and help him. I really think this race needs to flip. Any efforts we can do to go out door knocking, volunteer, and get the word out about how bad Janice Marchman is, can do wonders here. So the next one is Senate District 3, little mousy Nick Henriksen there. Now, he is not running again. This is going to be one of the biggest fights in the state. There's a lot of Democrats running. It's going to be really interesting to see. We do have somebody that I'm excited about down there, and that's Dana Charles. I'm looking forward to talking to her. She's been showing up at a lot of events, but she's been really so active on social media, especially Facebook. And she is the Republican candidate so far, the only one I've seen. But again, this is Pueblo County, a lot of opportunity, 1,705 votes. You have to think of the crime issues in Pueblo. We had the Pueblo police chief last year saying the blood of my officers is that lies at the steps of the state capitol in Denver because of all your safe on crime policies. After three law enforcement officers in Pueblo were shot by an ambush by this hardened violent criminal who should have been in jail, who had no reason to be out in jail with his rap sheet. But of course, our soft on crime policies put him back in the community. He had three of his officers shot. So Pueblo has suffered a lot under the Democratic Party policies, massive drug problems, massive gang problems, massive violence problems, and of course, a lot of a lack of economic opportunity. All of those things can be laid at the Democratic majority here in Colorado. So, you know, it's still important, I think, to pay attention to Henriksen and see how he votes because that needs to be part of the conversation going into 2026 election, right? Because you can say, okay, here's the new Democratic candidate. Or would you can ask him, say, would you have voted the same way Henriksen did? Do you agree with him on this and that? It's still part of the conversation. He's still currently that senator, so it is important to pay attention. But I think there's an incredible opportunity here. He does look like a mouse bombshell. 100%, but huge opportunity down in Senate District 3. If you know anybody down in Pueblo, if you live down in Pueblo, please get involved. Please start meeting people in your community who believe in liberty and freedom. Get organized and have a huge voice this election season. We need it, or else we're just going to keep going down the drain. What do you think, Michael?
Two things. I think it's important to point out two things. One, uh, primaries are a killer on a lot of campaigns. Every dollar that's spent in a primary is not able to be spent in a general election. So all this money spent on all these Democratic primary candidates where they have to sit there and attack each other and not go after the Republican, especially if Dana Charles is the only Republican candidate, that's going to be a huge advantage to that's going to be a huge advantage to Dana Charles going into this election, especially with the tide turning, with the entire county shifting red. I think that's going to be critical. I think that means that there is um there's a bit of momentum behind the Charles campaign if she's able to if she's abs if she ends up being the only Republican candidate that ends up um, running for this seat.
Yeah, I mean, this is 1,700 votes the last time this election was held. And then people can say, has your life gotten better or worse under the Democratic majority in Colorado? And there's a million reasons to say it's gotten worse. So great opportunity here. Really excited about this one, folks. But the last one in the Senate is Tony Exum. And we'll see. And we saw Tony Exum's name tonight. We got to keep track of that. I need to keep track of some of the bad bills he's on, some of the votes he's on, job killing bills especially. But this is that southeastern part of the Colorado Springs area. There you go by the Colorado Springs Airport. Kind of you can blow up that map. I'm sharing all these in the chat, at least the last few, so people can see kind of where the maps are if you're on YouTube. But 2,216 votes in 2022. Flipping those three Senate seats would do wonders for Colorado. It would slow down the worst of the worst, could prevent some bad bills from becoming law, and totally change the conversation under the Gold Dome. So another one that needs to go. We got to get Tony Exum out. Tony Exum has been very careful to not sponsor and not vote for some of the bad bills we've seen these last few years, but nonetheless, we got to get him out. What do you think, Michael?
I think that's a good point. He's been extremely careful because he understands that he lives in Colorado Springs. Yet he's still on certain committees. He's on a racial equity committee study. That is basically race-based communism. I highly encourage everybody to look up Anastasia. It was a racial program run by the Soviets in the 1920s, basically trying to uh, attack the how, what's the best way to put it? It was basically a Soviet program that designed to attack the um, the mainland Russian people to basically make all these other the Soviet bloc states feel like they were more or less on the same page um, as these Russian people. Yet all it did was create a divide between the entire between the mainland Russian people and the Soviet bloc, and they had to get rid of the program because of all the division it caused between everyone within the Soviet Union. So that's exactly what they're trying to do with racial equity. That's what a DEI is. It's Soviet propaganda, just repackaged for today based on race instead of your ethnicity or your background or your former country background. So that's extremely concerning to me. His ties, his philosophical viewpoint, and I think that's way too extreme for Colorado Springs. So I would let people know if they live in Senate District 11 that he's too much of he's a racial extremist and he doesn't actually care about individuals within Colorado Springs.
And just to give people an idea here, it's, Stratton Meadows, Stratmore Hills, Kelker, Hillside, and Nob Hill, kind of that whole area of Colorado Springs. So, Cimarron Hills, so east of I-25, as you could kind of see in the map there, but kind of central and southeastern part. So, by the airport, like we were saying. So that whole area there, if you know anybody down there, we need a good candidate to run. As far as I know, nobody was running last I checked. Would love to see somebody run for that election and get him out of there. So huge opportunity, folks. We have so much going on here in Colorado. Those are really the top tier races to focus on for flipping from Democrat to Republican. So Tony Exum, Nick Henriksen, Senate District 11 in Colorado Springs, Tony Exum, Senate District 3 in Pueblo, Henriksen's not running again. 15 up in Loveland area, Janice Marshman, and she is running again. House District 32, which is going to be vacant, so opportunities there. House District 61, House District 46 in Pueblo, and House District 53, Bob Marshall, and then House District 59, Katie Stewart. So incredibly winnable seats, folks. But let's put the work in, find good candidates, support them, and really do our best to flip those seats. I think that's an incredible opportunity here in Colorado. We want to give you some different information every week on the legislative live stream. We will have some legislators joining us in the future to talk about their bills, give us some inside information about what's happening down at the Capitol. Make sure you're following Michael Vance on X as well as Free State Colorado, of course. Really happy to see everybody here. Keep sharing this, keep getting it out. We're going to do it every Sunday night. Around the same time on the Free State Colorado YouTube channel. So tune in. If you miss it, you can always check it out later. Watch it at twice speed if we don't talk fast enough for you. But I think we're trying to get through them pretty quick because we're going to have a lot more to talk about the further we go into the session. So, folks, let's get out there, support the good legislation, support the good legislators, and really push back against all the bad stuff there. So lots to talk about next week. Really excited, but really appreciate everybody joining us this week. Michael, what thoughts do you have here as we kind of start wrapping stuff up?
I think there's a lot to look forward to this legislative session. I'm really looking forward to the way we're going to be able to take 2026's legislative session and turn it into the 2026 general election fight. That's the one thing that I want everybody focused on: 2026 general election. And during the primaries, if you find somebody that you think will best represent you over the next 2 years, help them bring what's been happening in the 2026 legislative session to the campaign trail.
Definitely. 2026 can be an amazing year for Colorado to turn the tide on authoritarianism and support good pro liberty candidates. But it all starts here at the legislative session for the next 115 days. We're going to be keeping a watchful eye on the bills coming through and really encourage people to participate, get involved, and have a voice. Especially if maybe you're a candidate running for office. Hopefully, these live streams can be useful because you're going to be more informed about what's happening. I'm really hoping that you watch these live streams. You're going to be one of the most informed people here in Colorado with what's going on in our state legislature. So really appreciate everybody watching, tuning in. The chat was a blast. So good to see so many familiar faces or familiar names at the very least because we can't see you. But good times. We'll see you again next week, and we'll talk to you soon. Any other final thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, 731 bills were introduced. So as we get as we get
That was
rolling, we've
last
already
year. Last
yeah,
year, yeah.
last year 731 bills were introduced last year. So as we get rolling, we've already seen 94 introduced. We're going to see a lot more over the next upcoming months. So get ready, get prepared. There's a lot to cover, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Awesome. Take care, everybody. Have a great week. Martin Luther King Jr. Day tomorrow, so no state legislature. Yeah, take care and go Broncos.
Go Broncos.